Hey everybody, coming up is my interview with Nick Prefontaine. We did a live Q&A. Nick is the extraordinary young man who at 14 had a terrible snowboarding accident. He was put in an induced coma to save his life. His parents were told not to expect him to be able to walk or manage his own self-care for the rest of his life. Nick defied them and not only walked out of the hospital, he ran out of the hospital and has since gone on to be a keynote speaker and motivational speaker. He was Yahoo's top motivational speaker of 2022. Here's my interview with Nick Prefontaine. Nick is calling in from Newport, Rhode Island, and he's going to share with us tips and tricks for overcoming severe trauma. He'll give you a little overview of what he overcame. He was never supposed to be functional again, and yet he not only walked out of the hospital, he ran out of the hospital, and now he has a whole program where he goes in and teaches people with traumatic brain injury and other challenges how to overcome them. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Nick, do you want to give a little background about yourself? What hit you early on in life and how you chose to respond to it and radically overcome your challenges?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And thank you again for this opportunity. Sarah, Dr. Perry, I'm really delighted for the chance to share with everyone and have a little bit of Q&A too. So my story, it goes back to in 8th grade, when I was in 8th grade at ski club with my friends. And my friends and I had all brought our snowboard gear onto the bus to get ready so we wouldn't miss a precious moment once we got to the mountain. And ski club was always an exciting time because we got released a little bit early. So, we were in 8th grade. So getting released a little bit early, that meant the world to us. So my friends and I brought all of our snowboard gear onto the bus to get ready. And getting ready, I realized that I forgot one thing that I usually brought to ski club, because it was a little bit bigger of a mountain than what I was used to. The one in my town was a smaller one, and that was a helmet. As I was getting ready, I realized that I forgot it. I didn't think anything would happen. Nothing ever did happen, so I just made sure that I was safe. Then once we got to the mountain, the rest of the class migrated inside to waste a good 2 or 3 runs, and we were ready to go. So we headed right for the chairlift, and on the way up, we noticed that it was very icy because it had been raining earlier in the day. So people were wiping out everywhere, and that didn't really faze us. Because it wasn't our first time around on snowboarding. I think that year, my friends and I, we'd been like every day for like 2 months. So we were pretty experienced. So I got to the top, buckled in my snowboard, took a breath of that crisp winter air, and confidently charged towards the terrain park with all my speed. And I went towards the biggest jump in the terrain park. And going up to the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard on the snow going up to the jump, and that kind of threw me off balance. So I was forced to go off the jump off balance. I later learned that I landed on my head. I wasn't wearing a helmet. And all these, the next few events all were fed back to me. I learned from eyewitness accounts, from doctors, from everything. I just kind of pieced it together based on what people told me. And there was 3 things that really I credit to saving my life, in large part to saving my life and why I'm able to be here today to tell this story. The first one was, although I didn't have a helmet on, the goggles that I was wearing were very thick with a lot of padding. So I learned that not only did they brace my impact, as I continued to hit my head and continued to roll down the mountain, my goggles mysteriously moved with each impact to cushion the blow between the mountain, the ice, and my head. So that was the first thing. The second was they wanted to bring a helicopter to the mountain to rush me to the hospital. They couldn't because it was too windy. So they had to send in an ambulance. And out of all the paramedics in the county, there was only one who could intubate right on the spot. And I needed that to be able to breathe. He was one of the paramedics that showed up to the mountain that day. So as you can see, I was recently talking about this on a podcast I was on a week or two ago, that I believe everything happens for a reason. So all of these little events, I believe was for a reason. It wasn't my time. And why I'm doing this today is it's really become apparent. That's the work that I'm doing today, and helping individuals through their trauma and thrive with the rest of their lives. So the third thing, once I made it to the hospital, now I was out. I was out for the count. The doctors said, they shared with my parents that I probably would have been out for 7 to 10 days based on the impact alone. And I already had swelling in my brain, and the doctors were worried that if I woke up and panicked and worried about, well, who are you people? What are you doing? How did I get here? I'd get upset, and the swelling in my brain would go up, and I would have died. So they had to put me into a partially induced coma so that my body could heal. The third thing, that wasn't the third thing. That's just like kind of a little sneak peek into that day. So the third thing, when I was resting in the intensive care unit, the doctors, through no fault of their own, they were just doing their job. My parents were the only ones allowed in the intensive care unit, at least initially, because of the severity of my injury. So the doctors, they were just doing their job. They walked in the room, started to share the not so positive news, not so positive news, not so positive news, as you can imagine, especially at the beginning with my parents. And as they started talking, my mom stopped them. And she said, no, not in front of him. Because up until a few months ago, Tara, I actually always used to say my parents stopped the doctors. And I was on my dad's show, his podcast a few months ago, and he stopped me and he said, well, no, I don't want to take credit for that. That was your mom. So now I say, my mom stopped the doctors and said, no, in front of him. Made the doctors step outside the room. And once they were outside the room, that's where they shared with my parents that I'd been in a snowboarding accident and I was in a coma. They weren't sure how long I was going to be out, but they had to put me into a partially induced coma so that swelling could come down. I ended up being in a coma for 3 weeks. I really don't remember a month. The doctors also shared with my parents initially that he's probably not going to be able to walk, talk, or eat on his own ever again.
Hey guys, studies are showing that 68% of people that watch podcasts regularly don't click the subscribe button. Do me a huge favor. If you like this content, click subscribe so other people know where to go for the cool stuff. Thank you. And Nick, do you happen to know the statistics on, because I know the longer you're in a coma, the less likely it is you're going to come out and be anywhere near normal. And it's a pretty precipitous drop off after just a few days. Do you happen to know statistically how often people come out of a 3-week coma and have not only excellent functionality, but become author of 3 books and motivational speakers? And do you have any idea of the statistics on that?
No, I don't. And I think that's kind of something that would be interesting to look up after the fact. But especially when I was going through this, and like I speak with people that have had, or family members of people that are going through trauma, and they just can't. Like yesterday, I was having a conversation with someone, and they just right now, like statistics and everything, that doesn't mean anything. They just have to focus on what's in front of them. I really have no idea. However, I say 3 weeks, and that's because I've seen videos of myself in the ICU, in the intensive care unit. I'm looking around, and I lost a lot of weight. So I lost over 20 pounds. I was 160 pounds when I got into the accident. And I lost over 20 pounds because I was in a coma. I was being fed through a tube. So I lost a lot of strength and weight and muscle and everything. But I've seen those videos of myself where I'm in the ICU. I'm like, my eyes are open. I'm looking around. I have no memory of being in the ICU. Absolutely none. However, a year, 2 years after my accident, I spoke at a groundbreaking ceremony at UMass Medical Center. They were doing a new building there. And I spoke at that, and as part of that, I went up and toured the ICU where I was. I was like, God, this place looks so familiar. I don't have a conscious memory of it. However, this place looks so familiar. That's because consciously I wasn't awake. I wasn't functioning. However, my mind remembered it because I was like, everything looks so familiar. Everything from the layout of the floor of the rooms, right down to the faces of the doctors and nurses. I was like, oh, I feel like I know them. So my memories really start a month after my accident. And a month after my accident, I was transported because I had to come off of that partially induced coma. So a month after my accident, I was transported to a rehab hospital in Boston. And that's where I began my journey. And initially I was transported to the third floor, which was reserved for the most critical of cases. Even the memories from the third floor at the rehab hospital are a little fuzzy. I don't really have a strong recollection of being on the third floor, but shortly after, I was transported down to the second floor. I was moved to the second floor as I continued to progress. And that was right around the time that I unknowingly started to use a system, and that's what I teach to this day, the STEP system, to not only make a full recovery, but run out of the hospital. So STEP is an acronym that stands for support. Make sure you have the support of your family and friends right from the beginning. This is going to have you falling back on relationships that you built prior to your setback. T is trust. Trust that once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be available to you. Follow it. And also, this is about following that calling that you have inside of yourself, the voice inside of yourself. Call it God, the universe. I call it God, but you can call it whatever you want, that voice inside of you. So I love sharing this story because it was right around the time that I was transferred to Franciscan, and this was even before I could talk. So I lost everything. So I lost all that muscle, the ability to walk, talk, eat on my own, everything. So I remember being in my hospital, being in my wheelchair, and I was in a wheelchair at the time. I still couldn't talk. I wasn't audible. And I overheard my parents talking with the doctors. And like I said, this was only shortly after being transported there. They said, all right, what do we need to do to make sure Nick makes a full recovery? And I heard in the back of my head, this is even before I could talk. However, the only way I was communicating was eye contact and like nodding and like smiling, that kind of thing. I heard in the back of my head, no, you're going to run out of the hospital. So then running out of the hospital became our common goal. And where my whole company name and everything comes from and the work that I'm doing today is common goal. So I heard that, and then I was able to communicate that with the rest of my team. So when I say my team, my parents, doctors, therapists, and everyone knew the goal and was shooting for that goal. So if you fast forward a little bit, less than 60 days later, I realized my goal of running out of the hospital. And that was a beginning. It wasn't an end. It really was a beginning, because once I got home, I then had to be tutored. So I would go into school for that month, call it, that because I got home on April 24th. I was able to get back enrolled in school, and my class was way past me as far as like the material and everything. So I would have to, just to give you an idea, I would go in, get tutored for 2 or 3 hours privately, and then I would get to have lunch with my friends and all my classmates, and that meant the world to me. That was so awesome to be able to do that. And then my mom would come and pick me up, and then I would go to outpatient therapy. So I had to go to outpatient therapy for another 6 months, along with being tutored all summer long, in order to continue on to high school with the rest of my classmates. And I'll pause there and take a breath. And
no, you're doing absolutely great. And the takeaway, I think, for everybody on the call is that, if we have a setback, if we can get really clear-headed and motivated about the outcome that we want and get synchronized with that, we can do a lot to draw ourselves to this. You probably know this, Nick, but I was in the hospital paralyzed from the neck down for about 5 days. And when I was going into that, it was Guillain-Barré syndrome. I was very lucky to have one doctor in all of Los Angeles, and I feel like I manifested him out of thin air. But he was probably the one doctor in all of Los Angeles that told me that I had an excellent chance of a full recovery. And so I completely fixated on that, and I blocked out everything else. And when I was in the hospital, one of the doctors there said, "Don't expect to make a full recovery." And I was really angry. I didn't express it at all, but I made a big giant red delete button, and I pressed it with all of my energy. And I'm like, that energy is not coming into my world. So for anybody that's going through a struggle, I think so far the big takeaway, or one of them, Nick's going to share a lot more with us, is to, define your own terms. And that doesn't mean to disregard, quote unquote reality, because sometimes we have to deal with reality. But Nick, would you say that that's a good takeaway from what you've discussed so far?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'd like to go back a little bit if we could, because I really wanted to, on this chat today, I really wanted to drill down into energy and how it really, by focusing on it, and how it really enables me to keep moving forward and to keep getting better. I still believe that I'm getting better to this day. So when I was in the hospital, I would always have my dad or a grandfather or an uncle stay the nights with me. So my mom would stay with me. This is my support, talking about support. My mom would be with me every day. Either my mom, actually always my mom. Several times, though, along with her was her parents or my grandparents. And then my dad would come in and spend nights with me. On the nights that he couldn't be there, I would have my grandfather or an uncle come in and spend the night with me. And my grandfather was staying the night. And whenever it was my dad or a grandfather or anything, they would always sleep in a cot next to my bed. And it was very early on in my recovery. I still wasn't cleared by the doctors to walk. So I would have to, and I wasn't audible. So I would have to, my voice was getting stronger. It was a whisper at strongest. However, I woke up in the middle of the night and I had to use the bathroom. So I leaned over my bed and I said, Bub is my dad's dad that I call him. And I call him Bub because I was the first grandchild. So he said, "What do you want the grandkids to call you?" And he said, "Bob." Well, I really wasn't able to say Bob as a baby, so what came out was Bub. I still call him Bub to this day. Bob was staying the night with me. We had fun, and I got up, and I had to go to the bathroom, and I leaned over my bed, and I tried to get his attention. I said, "Bob, Bob, Bob." Nothing. He wouldn't wake up. So what I did was I got out of bed, and I was pretty mobile. I was like very close. I was within a week or two of being cleared to walk on my own. So I was able to hobble my way to the bathroom, go to the bathroom, and come back, and nothing happened. However, the hospital found out, and because I wasn't cleared, they freaked out, and because of liability. And they said, well, we can't have this, and what we're going to do is before bedtime, give him this many cc's of this medication, that many cc's of some medication, and that should really calm him down so he can sleep. And my support, my advocate, was my mom, who was with me all the time. She was like, no, you're not. Just tell him not to do that. So she just kind of diverted that, told me, the doctors and everyone came at me and said, you can't do that. And then once I understood that, there was never any issue. But if you think of it, I would have, and that's protecting my energy, because if I didn't have an advocate with me, if I didn't have that support person with me, I wouldn't have been able to speak up, and they would have drugged me. And I say this with love and respect, and I know doctors and nurses do the best that they can. However, drugs and medication it's given to a lot of people just because it makes their lives easier. So
100%.
So I was so fortunate that I had someone, my mom, to watch out for me and say, no, you're not going to do that. I don't even know where I'd be today. It would probably be different. So that was the first point where that was the first point of like protecting my energy. And then as soon as I came out of the coma, my parents wanted to get me off of the drugs and medication as soon as possible. They knew of the body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. And that's not possible if you are constantly on drugs and medication. So if you fast forward a little bit, after I was home, after I was done with the extra 6 months of outpatient rehab, and I was caught up with my class when I was in high school and everything, a couple years after my accident, so 3 years after my accident, I started seeing a naturopathic doctor to rid my body of all the toxins that were pumped into me to help keep me alive. And I'm smiling because it's not like I could have, after that injury, said, no, you know what? I'm gonna just do the all natural approach on this. I'm gonna not do conventional medicine. I'm gonna try the natural route. I didn't have an option. It was a trauma. It was a traumatic injury. It was a traumatic brain injury. So I literally had to have modern medicine to keep me alive, and it saved my life. However, 3 years after my accident, I started seeing the naturopath to help rid my body of all the toxins that were pumped into me. And I would see him every 2 to 3 weeks for, it was 3 years. Every 2 to 3 weeks for 3 years, I would get treatments like foot bath, acupuncture, colonic, phangotherapy, hyperbaric chamber, infrared sauna, just to name a few, and that's not even all of them. However, that helped get all the toxins out of my body, and along with that came a diet and a supplement. I was searching for the word. Supplements that I had to take with every single meal, and I still take supplements on a lesser degree with every single meal to this day. The thing with that, though, I was in high school, so to have a strict diet it was based on your blood type. So to have a strict diet based on my blood type, to get all of those treatments every 2 to 3 weeks was kind of a big deal. And I remember sitting in at the Institute. It was called the Dodano Institute up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I remember sitting in one of the doctors at the Institute's office and him saying to me, reviewing all my levels in my chart and the progress I made with them after 3 years of getting those treatments, eating clean based on my blood type, and taking all the supplements. And he just said, not, I'm really not sure that you've done such a good job sticking with the program and the diet and getting the treatments that there's really not much we can do for you anymore. You're welcome to keep coming here for maintenance. However, I think we've kind of taken you as far as we can go. And right around that time, they always say whenever the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Right around that time, in March of 2009, I was introduced to my next teacher. I really call him a master now. He's Dr. Mingwu, a Taoist Tai Chi and Qigong master. And I started seeing him, and I still see him. I'm seeing him next week for Tui Na, followed by cupping. And I get that once every 5 weeks to help keep my energy high, so I'm able to impact and affect the most amount of people possible. And I've been seeing him since 2009. So over 15 years now, 15 and a half years now. And I really credit him and just a constant hunger and search for wanting to get better and never feeling like you're, okay, that's it, I don't have to do anything anymore. Because by doing that, I'm able to really live out my purpose, and that's helping others that are going through trauma. So if I can just, before we open it up, if I have time, if I could just talk about that voice in the back of my head. So it spoke to me when I was in the hospital that, no, you're going to run out, make full recovery. Then all throughout my life, since I got out of school, since I graduated high school in 2007, whatever I'm doing, I've always had this voice in the back of my head that no matter how successful I'm being, whether it's sales, marketing, real estate, anything like that, I've always had this voice in the back of my head that says, yeah, great, but what you really need to be doing is telling your story from stage and helping individuals get through their trauma and thrive with the rest of their lives. So that voice has always been there. And in 2012, I developed a voice issue, and I was searching everywhere. At the end of around this time in 2012, I was searching everywhere, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And my regular doctor, my primary care physician, he thought I was fine. He reviewed everything. He's like, yeah, you're fine. So he referred me to someone else, an ear, nose, and throat doctor. And that person had just a terrible bedside manner. And he just told me real quick after reviewing me, he's like, yeah, that's a very rare voice condition. You best be sure going right to the specialist in Boston and start getting Botox injections in your throat to relieve the tension. And I was like, whoa. So I took a pause and kind of looked for answers on my own. Long story short, a little less than a year later, in August of 2013, I wound up in a specialist office in Boston, and I started getting Botox injections into my vocal folds along with speech therapy. And I had to get that for 7 years. And because I took one step at a time, and I even unknowingly used the step system at this point too, because I took one step at a time, I now have my voice back for the second time. And it was right around this time that I realized, I was like, all right, I have something here. Like, I've used this twice in my life, and I think I'm more proud of the overcoming the voice challenge because maybe I have a little bit of recency bias. That took I say 7 years. I had to get treatments for 7 years, but that really took 8 years, 8+ years to really get the voice issue out of my system. So, I feel like I'm here today because of I've been taking care of my energy every step of the way and been getting these treatments. So in between every one of these Botox treatments, because I would have them a few times a year. And in between every Botox treatment, I would get the Tweenan massage, followed by cupping. And every time I came in for another Botox treatment, the doctor said, well, every time I'm seeing you, your voice is a little better. So even though you need another injection, your voice is a little better. Like, it's a little better every time. And really, if you look at it, statistically, there's like no cure per se for like voice disorders. It's kind of a troubling thing. And I just didn't accept that. So another thing you were saying, Tara, just refusing to compromise and just like settle for the status quo. That was another issue where I did that here as well, because I was like, no, my voice was 100% after my accident. I'm going to get my voice back. I did something to it. I'm going to get it back. And I just had that ideal in my mind. And for 8 years, I worked towards it.
Do you have any idea what you did to lose your voice, and what diagnosis did they give it? Just out of curiosity.
So he never. All right. So let me take a sip of water here.
And then let's open it up so people can ask you some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So he never diagnosed it. He just worked with people that have voice disorders. So I don't like self-diagnose like so many people do. However, the community, and right around the time when I developed this voice issue in 2012 and 2013, when I was looking everywhere for answers, right around this time, I was probing around online. I found the National Spasmodic Dysphonia Association. And all that means, spasmodic dysphonia, is it's really hard to get the words out. And it sounds like you're really strained when you're trying to talk, and that's because you are. Your muscles are very strained when you're trying to talk. However, with spasmodic dysphonia, and I never got a formal diagnosis of spasmodic dysphonia. However, I just related to that community and what they were going through, like the symptoms and everything that they were dealing with. So I had an idea that might be it. However, I just always term it as a voice disorder, because if I termed it spasmodic dysphonia, I never got a diagnosis. But if I termed it that, all the literature and everything on it says, nope, you're stuck with it. You have it for the rest of your life. It's just something you got to deal with. And I talked with so many people that say, yeah, well, that's good. You're optimistic and everything. This is while I was going through it. It's good you're optimistic and everything, but I've had this for 35 years, and I've been getting Botox injections for 35 years. I just almost like I said, thank you. Like, I never shunned anyone, but thank you. That's in my head. Thank you. That's not for me. I'm just like, that's not me. I'm just connecting with you to see how I can help you. So now they switched the name of that organization to Dysphonia International, which I think is a more appropriate title, because they also work with people that have all kinds of voice disorders. And I actually spoke at their conference last year in 2023. So just to be able to connect with and help people that are going through that, like on the breakout sessions and things, there were so many people that I connected with, and they were latching on to that diagnosis, if you will. And like, oh no, this is what I have. And I was always like, don't be the diagnosis.
100%.
Just keep working. And really, I'm going to credit my mom again. She was the one, when I was first searching for answers here to figure out what it was. I was like, hey, Mom, what about this thing, spasmodic dysphonia? And she was the one that said, don't latch on to that. You just have a voice like issue, a disorder, and you're going to fix it. That's what it is. So because it
And that opens up the possibility to having a much more direct route from where you are to where you want to go. Otherwise, if you just give yourself a limiting diagnosis or a limiting belief, then you've just created an artificial wall and an artificial boundary.
Yeah, so exactly. And one last thing. He wanted to, if I can finish my thought on the specialist, every time I came back for another Botox injection, it was longer and longer every time I came back. And he said to me that, Nick, you're one of the only patients that I have that every time you come in, your voice is a little better. Every time I came in, my voice was a little better. And my last injection I had was February of 2020, right before the world shut down. So it's worked its way out of my system. I don't need, thank God, I don't need Botox injections anymore. And it's just, once I got through that, I was like, I got something here. And then Trisha, my mentor, has helped me pull out of me. She's like, all right, well, how you got in an accident, you ran into the hospital, and then you had this voice disorder, you overcame it. How'd you do it? I was like, I don't know. I just got up and worked every day and just kept working. I wouldn't stop. And she goes, no, not good enough. Keep going. And she asked me to a point where I was frustrated with her. I was like, stop asking me. However, what came out of that was a step system, and that's what I teach to this day. In podcast appearances, keynote addresses, I speak for a lot of brain injury associations and other associations that support individuals that are going through trauma.
Wonderful. So let's open it up. Does anybody have some questions for Nick? What it was like to be in a situation where the odds were totally not in his favor, to formulate a mental toughness, a mental system, a mental framework to push through that. I imagine every day wasn't easy, Nick. Is that maybe true?
I don't remember the hard parts. Because it to me was never hard because I credit my parents and my family and my environment. It was always fun. And I just realized something. I kind of got off topic and forgot to share the E. So I shared the ST. I forgot to share the E and the P of the STEP system. So E is energy. Maintaining your energy allows your body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. And medications have the potential to get in the way of that. And then P is persistence. Once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be available to you. Trust it.
What would you say to somebody who had a significant challenge and maybe didn't have all that family support making it fun?
I feel like I've always done it throughout my entire life, is look at every situation like, how can this be funny? Like, where is the humor in this? And because of that, I feel that I don't remember the hard times, because like I always, no matter what I'm going through, I always feel like I try to joke around and make it fun. And but someone who doesn't have that support system, you don't need a support system to do that. You can just look at I had a setback, had a life challenge, had a trauma. What is funny about this situation? And one of the things I talk about within STEP, the ebook, which at the end I can give everyone a way they can download that for free. And what we went over is just a 10,000 foot view of the STEP system. But that really goes into depth and it talks about it, is that support doesn't necessarily have to be family. And that's one of the things that so many people that I work with latch onto. And so many people, even that I don't work with, that I hear about, or that have a question, will say, yeah, that's easy for you, but I don't have a family support. Support doesn't have to be just family. It can be a close friend or relative or a close neighbor that you share everything with. It can be, even if you don't have that, it can be the one person that keeps coming around and checking on you and asking how you're doing and how they can help you. However, you're closed off to it because you think it only has to be family. So you have to be open to receiving support from everywhere, not just the people who are related to you. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be family. It can be anyone.
Right. Really good point. Because ultimately the support is here.
Oh, yeah, it's all in your mind.
So who has a question for Nick? Don't be shy. The only stupid question is the one that's not asked. I see Nan there. Yes.
Elaborate more on the E, on that energy and information, the E in the step a little bit. You said something about medications. I'd like you to elaborate a little bit.
Oh, sure. I'm actually so happy that you brought this up. So the my master and the person who I still see now, like I don't go and see my naturopath every week or once a month like I used to. However, I still see him once a year for a review, a few other things like a review and an adjustment and just little things like that. However, Ming has taught me to, and that's focusing on your energy. That's exactly what that is by taking care of your health and taking care of your energy, your body's able to do its natural job of, like, your body knows what to do. You just have to let it. You just have to be in a place where you're healthy enough with things like health, regular health, diet, exercise, like you're healthy so that you're able to allow your body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. So when I talk about energy, meditation, all of that goes together. So Ming, when I started seeing Ming, he was the one who taught me how to meditate. So before Ming, I hadn't done much, if any, meditation. I think I may have done like a 10 or 15-minute video. However, Ming taught me to, and he really broke it down very simply. He said, just focus on nothing. And then when your mind wanders, to just bring it back to nothing. And you see how long you can build that up, Nan. It's at the beginning for me, it was 5 minutes. Then it was 10 minutes. And for a while I was stuck at that point. Then I got to a point now where I'm usually on average 20 to 30 minutes. And I meditate and do Qigong for anywhere from on average 30 to 60 minutes per day. And Ming was the one who taught me how to do that. So it's meditating for 20 or 30 minutes, just focusing on nothing. I see so many people talking out there, professing and saying that, oh, well, if you're doing meditation, you need to download this program or download this app or get this system or get this program. All meditation is to me is just focusing on nothing. It's so simple. And really, that's the premise of one of my most recent talks I did in New York City at the speaker salon. The last speaker salon was, I talk exactly about that. So does that help? I don't know if I answered your question. Okay.
That was great. And I love that because it really is focusing on nothing. And there's all kinds of apps and tools and stuff you can use, but ultimately, it's that simple. But it's challenging at the beginning, because until you train that muscle, it's like going to the gym with a weak muscle, and it just doesn't feel too good until you start building it up. But once you build it up, you get addicted to it, because you don't. Nick, if you had to go 2 weeks without meditating now, Nick, wouldn't that be difficult?
Yeah. No, I get uncomfortable if I go a few days without meditating.
Yeah. So it really does, it's like making a change in your diet. If you're used to junk food and then you start eating yummy salads and healthy, pasture-raised stuff. And, once that becomes your new normal, you don't want to go back to the old way of being.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mark, what's your question?
Hi. So if I'm slurring, I just came from the dentist. So sorry. First of all, Nick, your story is very inspiring and challenging to stick with any kind of routine for days or weeks, let alone multiple years. So that's a very, very inspiring endeavor. So thank you for sharing that. And,
I appreciate that.
So I did jump on late, but I had a whole bunch of things, and just a quick one, and I'll follow up. But when you're doing Qigong, do you see that as a form of meditation? And does it ever supplement your sitting or whatever process you use for just stuffing?
Yeah, it is. Thank you. They let me go into a little bit more depth on that. So I count it all as a meditation. So I do the 20 to 30 minutes on average of just focusing on nothing. And then I'll do, usually it's, I don't know, 10 or 15 or 20 minutes on top of that of Qigong. And excuse me, it's very simple for me. I could be doing a lot more, Mark, with Qigong, and Ming has taught me even that there are other moves that I could do. However, I just have a routine and it really works for me. And that's, so I do that. I focus on nothing and everything. And then I just do the ball. I do it, a count of it. That's one. So I do that 18 times. Then after that, I will just get the energy going, and then I can actually see it, and I'll bring it in to myself and hold it a little bit off of my stomach and just do circles clockwise 18, and then counterclockwise 18. And that's one. And then I'll do it again. 18, I'll do circles like slow like that. 18, and then I'll do it another 18. And then that's it. And then I kind of bring it into myself. I picture a beam of, I've literally never talked about this thing. So you're getting it. I picture almost like from Independence Day. You know that movie? It's an older movie.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. But the beam of light. So I just picture that coming right down through my power cord, I guess, if you will, right down. And then I bring that out. I bring the ball of light out, and then I just try to focus on it. And then I again rub the hands together, bring the energy in, and then bring it through my system three times. And that whole routine is usually, with the meditation and the Qigong, is usually anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes.
Cool. It's just a quick one. I just started getting twin arm massage too, actually, which is interesting.
That's amazing.
So you probably heard of Tom Tam, because if you're from New Hampshire, he's not far away. But I think he's probably a contemporary of Ming. But I'm curious, do you do the cupping at the same time as the twina, or do you do them separately?
No. Okay. So I think I've Ming may have studied alongside him, or he learned under him. I forget. I always forget. But yes, they're the Tui Na is the good stuff. Like I tell people that I'm getting Tui Na, and they're like, "Oh, that's the good stuff." So you're on the right. You're definitely on the right path. The Tui Na, it's Tui Na first, and then cupping after it.
So the cupping just helps the energy move more or to where it needs to
He's
go.
he's always done it. I don't argue with him.
So cupping pulls the old energy out. It's from the deep layers into the surface layers, so your body can more easily get rid of it. Thank God for Michael Phelps, because he made it very popular. I've done cupping for decades, and it really can dramatically shift something that has been stuck for a long, long time in the body.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Tara. This just sort of, I have other stuff, but just one question, because this kind of comes over into your world too. And when Nick was talking about the voice issues and challenges that he was facing, you know, in the world of energy and meditation, emotion, we understand that, you know, energy gets stuck in certain chakras and energy centers. And the throat is a huge one, you know, for a lot of people. And I'm just curious, Nick, in your healing journey, if you ever, if you or anyone that you went to see ever focused on helping move energy or identify some type of trauma that may have been stuck in your fifth chakra, you know, and I Tara, again, to throw that out to both of you guys, because I think you probably both deal in that world. So
yeah, thank you for that question. The fact that I've been getting Tui Na and working with Ming, and he was the one that like showed me that short routine for meditating and then doing the Qigong, that routine. I really feel like even to this day, when I get a treatment with him, when I get Tui Na with him, he'll even tell me after the fact. He won't tell me every time unless I ask, but he's like, "Oh wow, you really had stuck energy like there, like at that one point." So he still says that to this day. Now the fact that I've been getting it for over 15 years, I think all of your body never forgets. However, I feel like I'm as good as I can be, as far as the trauma still being in my body, if that helps.
So yeah, sometimes there can be a root cause that has to do with a mental emotional issue. The throat chakra tends to be speaking your truth with love and compassion. If there's an issue that maybe you have stuffed that you aren't willing to talk about, you're afraid to talk about, that can be a root issue. I recently worked with somebody who had 40 years of back pain from breaking his spine in a motorcycle accident. He's an advanced Dr. Joe guy. He was all excited when he found out I was an acupuncturist. I said, "Look, you've done acupuncture, you've done chiropractic. Why don't we just go to Command Central here and find out what's in the way of your healing?" He said, "Great, sign me up." And in 2 sessions, he didn't have the pain anymore. So sometimes there is just a really strong hidden belief in the subconscious mind that's getting in the way of the flow of energy. In Chinese medicine, dis-ease is most of the time a blockage of energy flow. Qigong literally translates to qi work. So that's using your mind and your body to improve the flow of qi energy. Thank you for that question, Mark. We're going to take a question from Brenna in our last minute here. Brenna, do you want to jump on and ask Nick your question?
Yeah. Hi, Nick. Thanks for the chat today. It's awesome to hear your story, and definitely commend you for your efforts. I know how hard it is to overcome a traumatic injury and how much perseverance and dedication it truly takes. It's awesome. You've been in it for a long time. A couple interesting things you said. Recovering from a traumatic injury, for most people, it's not fun. It's monotonous. It's the same thing over and over again. So it's so interesting that you're able to shift that perspective and turn it into fun. I'm just wondering, like, in periods of your recovery, if you ever felt like nothing you were doing was working and you're just showing up, you're doing the same thing every day, but maybe you're not seeing results as fast as you want, and how you made light of that or fun of that, or where your mindset was at in those situations.
I love the question, Brenna. Yes, people that hear about my story all the time will be like, "Oh, it must be easy for you. Do you got an accident? You ran out of the hospital?" Well, no, I'm human, just like everyone else. I had doubt. I mean, I can remember sitting in my hospital room when we don't have time to talk about the doubt that I had with my voice issue too, but I remember sitting in my hospital room and I was in a wheelchair and we were in between therapies. I had double sessions of physical, occupational, and speech therapy. And we were at the lunch break. And I remember I just was looking over my situation and I couldn't figure it out. I can remember turning to my mom and saying, "Am I ever going to be able to walk again?" She didn't hesitate. She said, "Of course you are. That's what we're doing here, so you can get everything back and we can go home." So in that moment of doubt that I had my support, or my advocate, which is within support, to encourage me and to keep me going. And I can safely say with my accident, that was the only moment of doubt that I had. However, I did have a moment of doubt, and I'm human. That's important for everyone to know.
Yeah. That's impressive. You only had one moment of doubt. That's amazing.
And I can remember, I mean.
Well, I also love, Nick, that you brought in the humor aspect, because we brought that into the mastermind a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I was working with a coach and I was struggling with something, and it was just, I was all in my head. And as Tony Robbins likes to say, when you're in your head, you're dead. And humor is a great way to bring yourself out of that. So what a blessing, Nick, that you're able to cultivate that in your life. So what she had me do is, I was getting all mental about something and she just burst out laughing. And you don't really want to burst out laughing when you're stuck in your head going, trying to figure something out. But if you just start laughing, you notice your whole energy changes. And it's like, oh, okay, well, then you have access to different portions of your brain. And actually, one of the fellows on this call, he did it with his son after and it completely changes your neurological activity up there, and you become lighter, and then you start to see possibilities that weren't there before. So if you can break that cycle of when we get so serious about stuff and everything gets so tight, and that's when the chi is not flowing. And so you want to do the opposite of that, and whatever it takes to get that chi flowing, whether it's ice baths or, sprinting or meditation or qigong or whatever it takes to shift your pattern and lighten the energy so that you have more neurological access to that beautiful energy that's, in your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. So thank you so much. And Nick, before we lose people, we're getting at the top of the hour here. How do they get your free download?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I almost forgot. And also smiling changes that. Just smile. Yeah, so what we covered is just 10,000-foot view of the step system. But when you go to my website, nickprefontaine.com/step, you can download the entire step system for free today.
Perfect. Brenna, did we answer your question? Because I know, we're all cheering for you to break through your obstacles.
Yes, you did. Yeah, thank you. It's nice to hear other people's perspectives.
Awesome.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Thanks for the support, too.
Good luck.
Nick, thank you so much for sharing all your insights about what it's like to triumph over major setbacks.
You're very welcome. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Bye for now. See you next week. This podcast is intended for the purpose of providing information and education. It does not provide advice and is not meant to be used for any self-diagnosis or the replacement of any kind of licensed professional. The creators and individuals appearing here do not endorse any specific tests, positions, medications, products, or procedures. The views and opinions are expressed in this podcast are of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.